Hello, hello, and welcome to a new episode of Flowers on Mars. I am Sylvia, I'm a PhD at Boston University in Classical Studies, and here is my brilliant colleague Adrian. She's a scientist at MIT, and today we want to give you a slightly different version of our podcast. We're going to read and we're going to discuss and we're going to walk you through a wonderful masterpiece, a book by Aldous Huxley, and the book is called The Doors of Perception. Aldous Huxley was an English journalist, philosopher, and essayist. He wrote more than 50 books, and he's well known for the book The Brave New World, the dystopian that you might remember. But of course, he's well known for The Doors of Perception and everything he did with this book. Also, Mr. Jim Morrison, I think, got some ideas from this book. So I'm going to read you, first of all, a little bit just from the introduction to this book, just to set you in the atmosphere. So, one bright May morning, writes Mr. Huxley, I swallowed 4/10 of a gram of mescaline dissolved in half a glass of water and sat down to wait for the results. So, one of the results of this experiment is in this book. But this book, of course, is not just about the experiment with mescaline, it's much more. Mescaline is the active principle of peyote, the desert cactus long used by the Indians of Mexico for religious purposes. So it's the drug that produces profound alteration of consciousness. This is why Aldous wanted to experiment with mescaline. And the concept, so the title of the book, The Doors of Perception, which is beautiful, is taken by poet and painter William Blake, that you might have heard about. Blake wrote that there is something, so he was writing about inspiration and poetry, and he wrote this phrase that there's something that cleanses the doors of perception, so that the world is transfigured and taken to an extremely enlarged, beautiful universe. So this is why Huxley decided to call the book The Doors of Perception, and we just want to get you through this book, and because we think that is a masterpiece, and we think that perception is actually the key concept. We ended our last episode, and we want to go through this.
And we actually think it's probably our superpower as human beings,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
which
actually,
maybe
yes.
Difference between computers and us.
Yeah, what makes all the difference. So
yeah, so I will start reading some passages. We're going to discuss it, and hopefully you'll learn a lot about it. So obviously this does not give justice to this magnificent piece of work. So I think you really want to read it yourselves. Yeah. But maybe it gives kind of a bit of flavor, like, or maybe a different viewpoint that we saw.
Yeah, and maybe leave you with the idea and with the this just willingness to read it, because I think it's beautiful when you have someone that can get you through books and these wonderful books.
Exactly.
Because it changes a lot for us.
And also a dense book where every sentence is very complex.
It's mind-blowing.
So I'm starting at one page where he's actually reflecting on his experience and where he kind of sees the brain as a tunneling channel.
Okay, so he had just taken the mescaline to arrive to adjust the state of alteration of perception, so the sense of seeing and being in the environment, be wired in the world in a different way. So what happens?
Yeah, so I will start here with this passage that each person is at each moment capable of remembering all that has ever happened to him and of perceiving everything that is happening everywhere in the universe.
Okay, so he basically is arguing that after this drug, after entering in this experience, there is like he stepped into this new universe in which time is relative, in which you can retrieve all the memories.
Memories, but also where you can sense everything that is going on.
Okay. Everywhere, like it's a quantum mechanic world.
But then anyway, imagine what an overload you could have. So the function of the brain and nervous system is to protect us from being overwhelmed and confused by this mass of largely useless and irrelevant knowledge, by shutting out most of what we should otherwise perceive or remember at any moment, and leaving only that very small and special selection which is likely to be practically useful. Mm-hmm. According to such a theory, each and one of us is potentially mind at large.
Okay.
So mind at large.
So the idea is that with the alteration of perception in every possible ways, I would argue. So he's doing the masculine. So we're just taking over this brain that filter and select the reality for us, so we can live in the reality in a normal way. We can function, selecting things.
Yeah, otherwise you'd constantly be distracted.
But if you enlarge your perception, if you open the doors, then you get into this mind enlarge, and then you are distracted, but you also gain something.
Exactly. But in so far as we are animals, our business is at all costs to survive. So if we'd constantly be distracted and like looking at leaves, how beautiful they are, and the colors and everything, some predator would just kill us, right?
That makes sense, and this is why maybe what he's arguing is that we should make a wise use of this eventual enlarged mind. So when we step out of normal perception, a wise use of enlarged perception maybe, because normally otherwise it would be overwhelming.
Exactly. And to make biological survival possible, mind at large has to be funneled through the reducing valve of the brain and the nervous system. So this is what our brain is actually doing. Mm-hmm. What comes out at the other end is a measly trickle of the kind of consciousness which will help us to stay alive on the surface of this particular planet.
Very particular planet. We are wired to live in this very particular planet. I just love it so much.
And to formulate and express the contents of this reduced awareness. So I mean, we're all here with a reduced awareness because our brain shuts out all the noise.
That makes sense.
Man has invented and endlessly elaborated those symbol systems and implicit philosophies which we call languages. Yeah. This I find is beautiful.
So let's explain a little bit. So language, that is what he's saying, is the symbolic system to make sense of this awareness, the limited awareness that we have. So the biggest awareness, the big one, the mind at large, is one step beyond language.
Exactly. Language, actually, as we know it right now, is so reduced because our perception is reduced. So we could tap into way more if we perceive more.
Of course.
And now, if you think about the all these language models that ChatGPT or XAI are using for Grok, they're all based on this language, which is limited.
They are string of codes. So they're languages. Languages are symbolic system. There is something beyond it. Mm-hmm. There is something beyond words. It's like the mythical language. It's something primordial. And this is what it's talking about.
And also what we talked about in the first episode with feelings, right? Like everybody can describe love, but nobody can really grasp it. And love every feeling is different for everybody else.
But everything, like language is just tricking us all the time. Yeah. We would never have a complete understanding of one another. Think about each language is situated in a situation, in a time, space, and perception. I want to say something and I say something else. I say something but I imply something else. So it's way more complex.
Yes, but I find also with like what we're doing with large language models is like we're actually building a whole lot out of not so much. Imagine we change our perception, we enhance our perception, and everything gets more complex. Then also our language models will be better.
Or maybe we won't need a language model. Or we will need a more complex language model. But let's go.
So every individual is at once the beneficiary and the victim of the linguistic tradition into which he has been born. The beneficiary inasmuch as language gives access to the accumulated records of other people's experience. The victim insofar as it confirms him in the belief that reduced awareness is the only awareness, and as it bedevils the sense of reality so that he is all too apt to take his concepts for data, his words for actual things.
So, I want to say something. So, the false belief, so language tricks you in the false belief that your limited awareness, or anyway, just limited, focused awareness is everything you have. Mm-hmm. And if you remember, we had a discussion like the other day with someone, and at some point we were saying, look, you think in your philosophy, in your way of like using language to analyze problems, there is everything and a solution as well. So you think that with language you can wrap it all, you could take it into consideration everything. But there's more.
There's more.
Like at some point, life, different kind of perception of feelings, they are gonna come into and they are gonna say, look, dude, this is not enough. You cannot explain and reduce everything with your language.
You cannot explain the universe at all with language.
Yeah, rationality sometimes tricks us into thinking that everything is possible through rationality, but it's not. And this is kind of a limited self.
Exactly, and we're building a whole lot on this limited self.
Yeah, we're building a lot.
But it's actually beautiful how he puts this like limited belief. So we're all in a belief system, if you want it or not. You're in a belief system, and it's based on your reduced awareness. And that which, in the language of religion, is called this world, is the universe of reduced awareness, expressed and as it were petrified by language. Petrified, I think, is a very strong word here, like solidified, made to stone, like almost not. You can't change it.
It's just like grammar, you know. Like language was born as a very vital thing. So you know, dialect. Language is born out of bodies. Was born out of
beautiful
necessity, no? Out of even out of screaming, or you know, the little like mama. Yeah. They're born out of very, very primitive things. But then we built, of course, we became super sophisticated, luckily, and now we also crystallized grammar thing, and everything now is petrified into very profound concepts and very loaded.
Yeah.
And then we get a little bit petrified and far from.
Well, exactly. We probably as a society are also a bit petrified. I think a lot of people now are feeling like they want to break out of this construct that we put ourselves in.
Well, for sure, this idea of the language as something that should be more vital is a take-home message here.
The various other worlds with which human beings erratically make contact are so many elements in the totality of the awareness belonging to mind at large. Most people, most of the time, know only what comes through the reducing valve and is consecrated as genuinely real by the local language. Certain persons, however, seem to be born with a kind of bypass that circumvents the reducing valve. In others, temporary bypasses may be acquired either spontaneously or as a result of deliberate spiritual exercises, or through hypnosis or by means of drugs.
So it's telling us that there are also people that experience more normally enlarged senses and enlarged perception.
Well, like an artist.
Yeah.
Artists sometimes see other or more things.
And kind of different. Sometimes when we talk, we're like, and we are a mescaline. We're not. But we could literally stare for hours to the details of a flower or to the details of a leaf.
Well, look how beautiful.
And that is like it's a trip every time into details. But so you don't need to be in drugs to do that. It's just like sometimes you have your perception enlarged.
And he says it here: deliberate spiritual exercises. Like, I mean, you can train your perception. You can get that to that level, but obviously it takes a lot of dedication and a lot of work to do so.
Love for life.
But I think also through the book, we're going to weave through a lot of passages. We're going to get to like why it could be beneficial, but why maybe sometimes anyway we also still have to be humans and just
but we are humans.
Be in our reduced valve sometimes as well.
Well, of course, but we will be anyway.
We'll get to that point.
Let's swim, yeah.
So anyway, through the drugs, through these permanent or temporary bypasses, there flows not indeed the perception of everything that is happening everywhere in the universe, because anyway, for the bypass does not abolish this reducing valve, which still excludes the total content of mind at large, but something more than, and above all, something different from the carefully selected utilitarian material which our narrowed individual minds regard as a complete or at least sufficient picture of reality.
Yeah. We step up. We step one step further then.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm curious, what does he say more?
Well, this is it for this passage. You can go read it again. But I think this passage, or we chose this passage because there's like these three very profound elements with the brain has to be this reducing valve. It has to limit us because we could have survived with just perceiving everything.
He was born with this role also of selecting and cut down elements.
Yeah.
This is what rationality does.
Exactly.
Select, cut down, like just put categories into things. So I decide to go A, B. This is logic, right? Logic is selection.
So yeah, exactly. One part is logic. Then the other part, which is absolutely beautiful to me, is the language part. Like that we, or that he interweaved like this very important component of human civilization, which is language, which is communicating with each other. And that this is a construct of our perception.
And also the fact that this is such an important element, like that distinguishes us actually from animals, is also a trap in a way. So it's a trap for us because it's not enough. We are constantly tricked by language, and in thinking that language is all the way that we have to experience reality, we forget everything else, because sometimes there are other languages, like body languages, movement languages, like look and eye languages. Those are other languages that are as powerful, if not more powerful, than language itself. And we kind of forgot about them, right?
We get to a very nice point in the book.
Looking forward to it.
But anyway, it weaves into this third one where we can actually bypass this reducing valve with spiritual experiences or exercises. Also drugs. So, we don't want to promote drugs here, but like you can bypass this, and you can enhance your perception, and this would probably be beautiful for a lot of people.
Of course. No, we are just talking about an experiment that did, and anyway, even now some drugs have been used like in psychiatric for kind of helping for people struggling with PTSD disorders and things like that. So we are talking about a serious, like scientific and literary experience here. It's
and
not
also
about promoting drugs. It's something that is culturally like profoundly significant here. What he did.
Well, and consciousness studies looking into mind altering drugs to figure out what makes us conscious. So I'd like to go on to the second section, where this one's beautiful. It's about, look at the flowers, about the colors.
Yeah, let's dive in.
So in this context, how significant is the enormous heightening under mescaline of the perception of color? For certain animals, it is biologically very important to be able to distinguish certain hues. But beyond the limit of their utilitarian spectrum, most creatures are completely colorblind. Bees, for example, spend most of their time deflowering the fresh virgins of the spring, but as von Frisch has shown, they can recognize only a very few colors.
Just 3, right?
Yeah, 3. But actually, von Frisch, he actually got the Nobel Prize for showing that bees could actually see color. Yeah. So this is beautiful.
And they also see some ultraviolet light that we cannot perceive, so they have their own kind of perception. So right?
I think this was 1954. Yeah, 7 years ago. They knew less. Actually, what it shows is they just see in a different spectrum. Yeah. So what appears white to us appears blue to them. Yeah. And then they obviously then see more shades of this white color, or which we perceive as white. But so maybe Huxley did not get this totally correct.
It's okay. It was 1954. He couldn't know.
Exactly. But and it doesn't move away from his this profound insight. Man's highly developed color sense is a biological luxury. Whoa. A biological luxury.
Wow. I love this idea. Yeah, because why at the end? So let's think about some colors. Okay, red, flat. Okay, problem. Okay, run away, blood.
Yes.
Okay, let's take it, because for evolution we need to run away from predators. Yeah. Then what about yellow, green, and purple, and pink, and the beautiful of the rainbow? Why do we have all this experience? Because we can actually, I think we can actually distinguish a lot of nuances of colors. I don't know how many, but a lot.
Exactly, but the whole visual spectra to us. But then I think it's not kind of like why it's kind of like how did we see this? How can we see a beauty in it? How can we almost fall in love with a beautiful color, be mesmerized by it, hypnotized by it?
And why nature decided to leave us with the ability to experience purple?
Yeah, and all these different shades of color.
Why do we need purple in life? Just tell us if you know.
But I won't
email us. I want to know if you know why we need purple. Purple rain.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So man's highly developed color sense is a biological luxury, inestimably precious to him as an intellectual and spiritual being, but unnecessary to his survival as an animal.
But Adrian, then we don't need too many luxury items.
No.
If we are already provided with this luxury, biological luxury, if we just knew that and how to use them.
Well, that's the true luxury in
right?
That we're able to see and perceive.
You don't need too much luxury, because we already have it.
But I do also hear, he says, but unnecessary to his survival as an animal. Anyway, like you said before, we need the color red. It shows something poisonous. Something.
The red, but the orange?
There's always, anyway, it's again this trade-off. It's always, we just then added extra layers to it. It's not just for survival, it's actually for enjoyment.
It's for beauty.
And
so
that's why
enjoyment.
Well, this is the spiritual
So there is
being.
enjoyment in evolution.
Yeah. Maybe,
an extra enjoyment, more than the required.
Exactly.
So this is extra. Isn't it beautiful?
Well, yeah. I think this goes with consciousness, but we'll get to more of these discussions. So, to judge by the adjectives which Homer puts into their mouths, the heroes of the Trojan War hardly excelled the bees in their capacity to distinguish colors. In this respect, at least, mankind's advance has been prodigious. So, abnormal. So he puts in here, at least, we advanced in an abnormal way because it was not just for survival. Mm-hmm. But what do you think he means with Homer puts into their mouths, the heroes of the Trojan War, hardly excelled the bees in their capacity to distinguish colors?
So I think that it might be referring to the fact that so at the beginning of the 19th century, there was a study actually made by a prime minister, an English prime minister, about the words of color in Homer. And anyway, in the Iliad and in the Odyssey, the numbers of colors are limited in a way. So there is a lot of black, a lot of white, a lot of shiny things, like things that are shining, that are metals, gold and copper. Yeah. But not a lot of green, yellow and blue. So it's like something that struck this was a study that was made at that time. So I think that the take-home message was, Homer is not using a lot of colors. So did the people of that time perceive colors as we do? So there was a lot of debates around it. So I think this is what
that's beautiful. Well, anyway, it's impeccable how Huxley had so much knowledge, which anyway, sometimes you really need to take apart one sentence. And anyway, we're only at the beginning of dissecting his works. And sometimes you have to. Or I read this book I think 10 times in the last 6 months, and every time I see something else, I'm like, oh, what does he mean with in their mouth? He put so much thought into it.
Well, maybe we will go
absolute genius.
Maybe we will go back to this color study about Homer, because it's very intertangled with languages and it's interesting. We will go back in another episode too.
And then he goes on with mescaline raises all colors to a higher power and makes the percipient aware of innumerable fine shades of difference, to which at ordinary times he is completely blind. So again, the biological luxury, again, the colors, the heightened perception.
So what I think is that, again, the perception, when you step in the giant mind, everything which is extra. So, but the extra that is within us already, it's enlarged. Mm-hmm. So it's not just about the survival mode.
No.
Here you go, the other mode.
You tap into a totally different mode.
When you don't have to survive anymore, then you float, and then you can enjoy, and then you can see all the other things. Isn't it a beautiful message in a way?
What else is around? Yeah, but this will allow us to discover the universe and what it's all about.
What is a beautiful message to take home even now? So if we take care of all the other things, maybe through AI or whatever, what if we just enjoy life with all this extra luxury that we have and enhance our biological thing that we already have?
There's so many things to still be discovered if we could heighten our perception. And it would seem that, for mind at large, the so-called secondary characteristics of things are primary. Unlike Locke, it evidently feels that colors are more important, better worth attending to than masses, positions, and dimensions.
Whoa.
So anyway, Locke was, a poet, writer in the 17th century. And anyway, what I think he puts out here is masses, position, and dimensions. Like, you could compare this table that has like a dimension, like a clear surface and everything. But so this is given. This is like the hardware. But then the software is the color, the perception of like how it is, like different shades of it. So I think here again, very profound sentence, which a lot of depth, to see how anyway, like that color is different than these given dimensions that we have.
So gently painted. So just look at these flowers. So they have a shape, and the shape has a purpose. So they call the bees. They're just, they are crystallized in this shape which is present. And then just painted just this gentle thing that we don't know, like the color. So different, right? So light.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. So anyway, also there, the hardware needs to be there, but then the software is kind of the color. And everybody perceives the software a bit in a different way. So then, like mescaline takers, many mystics perceive supernaturally brilliant colors, not only with their inward eye, but even in the objective world around them. Similar reports are made by psychics and sensitives. There are certain mediums to whom the mescaline taker's brief revelation is a matter during long periods of daily and hourly experience.
Colors.
Yeah. So that was the second section, which just like, to wrap it up, is like, anyway, this perception, this biological luxury of perceiving color. And then that it's enhanced when you open your doors during like a drug tip or other heightened awareness.
And that biological luxury that is already there with us. So basically we don't need so much luxury, first of all, if we already have this one. And also, I think the other good message is, if you go and step over the survival mode, which is very important, the primary one, and you live in a world which can give you a lot, like the technological world in which we are, we still have to take care about a lot of things. But at this point you can relax. Maybe your brain can start to tap into other form of energy. And what if humanity at some point take care of all the problems, the hard problems, and we can just tap into this other part of us.
And don't you also think it makes us these spiritual beings in search of God, rather than just being in survival mode? So all of a sudden we had more, our brain had more energy, maybe we had more connections with our neurons, and all this, and our perception was heightened, and that's where spirituality comes from, this questioning of who we are. What is this? Why is this so beautiful? Why would anybody create something so beautiful?
Yeah, well, it's also possible that the transcendent strive in human beings, which was there since the mystical, the first primitive man. It was before the structure religious actually took place. This idea of there is someone beyond us, there's this transcendence idea. Maybe was there. It maybe comes from the same territory, right? The same territory beyond rationality, the same territory that maybe now we could start to explore again, with the help of science and technology and the other kind of rationality super developed as it is.
I think we're going there. I think that's kind of
let's dive in another path.
Exactly. So this was the last one for today, because this book has a lot, so we'll continue another time. But I have this one before he wants to leave this subject. So let me add, before we leave this subject, that there is no form of contemplation, even the most quietistic, which is without its ethical values. Half, at least, of all morality is negative and consists in keeping out the mischief. The Lord's Prayer is less than 50 words long, 50. And 6 of those words are devoted to asking God not to lead us into temptations. The one-sided contemplative leaves undone many things that he ought to do, but to make up for it, he refrains from doing a host of things he ought not to do. The sum of evil, Pascal remarked, would be much diminished if men could only learn to sit quietly in their rooms.
Oh, I remember this sentence by Pascal. Mm-hmm. I remember it. It's probably true to a certain extent. It's probably true. Sit alone with your thoughts and just be with yourself and contemplate, he says, right?
Exactly. Well, if you're kind of meditating, if you're sitting there asking yourself who you are, asking yourself about spirituality.
Okay. But I also want to challenge you a little bit on this. Like, I don't know, there's a part of me that thinks that some chaotic part of human being will never be taken care of with like any kind of tools, any kind of spiritual thing, and we need to consider some sort of madness, even maybe some sort of evil.
But you could contain a bit of the evil to yourself and not project it on other people.
The containment, I agree on that. I agree in the containment, not in the suppression maybe, because the suppression
is never healthy.
Right? The idea, we can create the perfect white, pure, in the sense of like pure and the kind of like enlightened humanity. I think it has done a lot of damages.
Exactly. So and look at like little boys. No. They're like rascals. They're very wild, and you don't want to contain their energy too much, because then their brain is diseased afterwards as well. If you just sit them down all the time,
you need some shadow. You need to me, the point is that you need to surf on all these nuances, all this extreme world of complex world of feelings of dark and light. This is a Tao.
But you need to know when you're on top of the wave and riding it, and you need to know when you're kind of getting off of it.
Yeah, you need to ride.
Exactly, you need to ride it,
and you still need to ride it.
And you can't harm others.
No.
You can be as wild as you want, as creative as you want, but not to harm anyone else.
And this is why you need the wilderness. You need the discipline to tame the wilderness, and this is when it gets difficult.
Yeah.
So you need the jungle, and you need to tame it at the same time.
You need the zero and the one.
Well,
you need the ups and the downs.
We know something about it, right? You go through something. You go through a lot of emotions and feelings in the jungle, and then you experience. You want it. Because you want to feel the wilderness, you want to feel it, but then you learn how to tame it, how to discipline it, how to live with it without suppressing it. I think that is a good point.
Yeah, and it would be boring without any kind of radical ideas or new ideas or trying new stuff. So he goes on with, the contemplative whose perception has been cleansed does not have to stay in his room. So this is, I think, what he means now. You don't just have to sit there and meditate about and think thoughtfully. Yeah. He can go about his business, so completely satisfied to see and be part of the divine order of things that he will never even be tempted to indulge in what Traherne called the dirty devices of the world. So Traherne here, he's a 17th century poet, right? And he was actually the one. So what do you think he means with dirty devices of the world?
I just love it so much. It's a welcome.
The dirty device.
Sorry, it makes me think about a Pink Floyd song, "Welcome to the Machine." This is the device. Come on, we all know what the machine is. No, I'm joking. No, or maybe no. But the device because the word is a mechanism, it's a device, and we are all trapped because we are all conditioned by, in some big or small extent, by this whole mechanism of society in the societies we live in. So I think this is the point. But I like what he said when he said the man that contemplates, and he can just contemplate and then go back to the business. And the idea makes me think a little bit about the Zen concept, no? So before enlightenment, you cut the wood and go and take the water. And after enlightenment, you go and cut the wood and take the water.
Yeah.
So it's like Adrian and Sylvia, before the enlightenment, they put lipstick and they dance. And after the enlightenment, they do it again.
Exactly. You just do it differently. It's different.
Yeah, it is.
And Traherne, he was actually encouraging people, or his readers, to see the world with more childish and fun way, right? So that was his message as well.
Yeah.
So again here, Huxley intertwines like the be childish, be like the rebel, be like a little rascal, a little boy trying to do things in the world, but come back and contemplate.
That's beautiful.
So, like you said, the yin and the yang.
That's beautiful.
The big waves and the low tide. And
it's the little kid playing and then go back home. It's like this beautiful thing, because the little kid play, but then has a home to come back and sleep. Yeah. Because he needs to be taken care of. Yeah. Isn't it beautiful? Yeah. Because a little kid, if he goes lost in the wood, I mean, they can still survive, but it's stuck. I mean, we don't know. So it's kind of nice. It's beautiful.
And then when we feel ourselves to be the sole heirs of the universe, when the sea flows in our veins, and the stars are our jewels, when all things are perceived as infinite and holy, what motive can we have for covetousness and assertion, for the pursuit of power or the drearier forms of pleasure? This for me, it was one of the take-home messages of the book.
Yeah. Well, in a way it is, because like if you perceive every single small thing as a miracle, and if you're happy about a flower, about a cloud, about what, like the light on the sky, of like things being here, you don't need many other things.
Well, or also like now you're describing a lot like of the positive, but I love rainy days, because rainy days make you calm, or rainy days kind of flush things out of your system. And so this is what he means with the like let it flow, or like perceive it as infinite and holy. Everything belongs together in some kind of way,
and you enjoy. And sometimes I think that we need to look for and to like run towards this pleasure. That's a lot of artificial pleasure, dopamine society, they call us, no? Yeah. Sometimes I think that we have to do this just because we are depriving ourselves from the real pleasure. Not because we are working all the time, but we are just the real pleasure. Dancing, singing, using our instinct, just playing, just those things. Painting, very simple, using your hands. Yeah. Like just, forgetting the real little pleasure. And of course, if you forget this real little pleasure, and then you have this other like pleasure that are offered to you by other kind of devices in society, then you just go and want them. But the simple pleasure are very simple indeed, and just the act of singing make you feel so good if you think about it.
But you have to retrain your brain, because it's obviously way easier to just sit in front of a screen and get dopamine hits than like getting up and going to dancing or something. So dancing. I think
play a musical instrument.
But there's more work involved.
I know.
And this is, and because you're stressed all the time, you're not going to want to do that at night.
But also I think our society, you remember there is a beautiful book that we read together. I actually met the authors. It is called Our Brain on Art. It's beautiful. So it actually argue that arts should be more incorporated into our everyday life. So the idea is that our society is not doing enough to take back this play, to take back this art and this enhanced feeling into our everyday life, because those things are as important as eating vegetables, like broccoli.
Yeah, and also the colors are the beautiful thing. Yes. But let's finish this last section. Contemplators are not likely to become gamblers or procurers or drunkards. They do not, as a rule, preach intolerance or make war. Do not find it necessary to rob, swindle, or grind the faces of the poor. And to these enormous negative virtues, we may add another, which, though hard to define, is both positive and important. Now the last section. The arhat and the quietist may not practice contemplation in its fullest, but if they practice it at all, they may bring back enlightening reports of another, a transcendent country of the mind. And if they practice it in the height, they will become conduits through which some beneficent influence can flow out of that other country into a world of darkened selves chronically dying for lack of it.
So they are saying that people that contemplate can bring light to other people.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the arhat, like people that are
professional,
like religious, almost entities that sit there and practice contemplation, like meditation, spirituality, and just like this state of calmness. And I think, well, this is why we practice meditation. I think, like there's a lot of beneficiary things that come out of it.
But I think there are also more formal meditation. I think that music and playing a musical instruments, dance is a formal meditation. Possibly like the strongest one. Doing some sports, some martial arts are formal meditation. So they're all state of mind that actually bring the body with them. Cooking.
Well, it also brings like this awareness of the moment. If you're more in the moment, you're healthier. You're happier because you're not in anxiety. If you're just sitting there, you get anxious because you start thinking about all these scenarios.
Also because you're just all in your brain. So the meditation itself is good because you can have linear meditation, your thoughts, and then you just detach from them. Or you can have an outside meditation where you look at the things, which is also good because you train your mind to kind of shift, I think. And then you can meditate by touching things, by just using again your senses. So
or dancing with your eyes closed. It's so beautiful.
It's nice.
So we went through 3 parts of the book. We'll continue next time.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, we will. So, and just to give you a little bit of more frame of what we are doing. So Adrian is now finishing with the Door of Perception, and after that I am gonna read The Island for you, and we are gonna discuss another Aldous Huxley book. So yeah, this is a new format that we are trying to give you, and I hope you enjoy it because we enjoy it so much because we like to read together and we are learning so much.
Well, we also thought, like, what did you enjoy as a child? You enjoyed like storytelling, or someone reading a book to you.
Yeah. Oh my god.
So why not do it as adults, and why not read a bit more, and then you don't have to do all the work of going deep.
Yeah.
And these are like profound works. Like all his books also kind of intertwine with each other. He only did this because he wrote, I think 10 or 20 years before this, he wrote the book The Art of Seeing. So anyway, how your eyes perceive. So this kind of made him think like, oh, there's more to it. And then he talked to people. He read more about it, and he really wanted to go on this trip.
And this is why I did this experiment. So we're talking about a seeker. We're talking about a man that for all his life tried to understand. And he gave us not just this book, but beautiful fiction book, like a masterpiece, The Brave New World, the dystopia, that actually, in a way, foresaw so many things that are happening in this kind of technological industrial society right now. And The Island, the book that we are going to read, is the opposite of The Brave New World. It's the utopia. It's the manifesto of Aldous Huxley idea about education and life. And you're going to love it, I think.
Yeah, so we hope you enjoyed it, and tune in next time because this book is not finished yet.
Tune in. Okay.
Bye-bye.